Young Japanese are starting to realize what? At this rate, Japan might disappear. This may sound dramatic, but it's already happening. 25-year-old Japanese living alone in Tokyo. I used to fully support immigration because I thought diversity would make the world more interesting. I think diversity does make the world more interesting, but the whole world doesn't need to be in your city. I'm a big fan of multiculturalism, of diversity. I think it's a good thing, but that doesn't mean that you have to combine everything into a massive soup in every single area. There's cultures that don't really mix very well together, right? And I think we all know this. That doesn't mean that they can't have interplay. That doesn't mean that they can't have mutual appreciation. That doesn't mean that they can't work together to solve common problems. But it does mean that in day-to-day life, if you have these people living next door to each other, you're going to have problems. That's the way it is. We see my opinions change. Not that I'm against it. And this is what all people are still in this period of time. I think a lot of people are afraid of being labeled as a racist for being against immigration, especially like large forms of immigration. But I think this is a receding value. I think that in time, people will simply not care. I fear Japan will split into two separate communities. Wow, only two? That's pretty lucky. I saw a similar scene in Canada. People hate immigration because immigrants never assimilate and respect the country. Well, they don't do that because they are being brought in at levels that they don't have to. So here's a really good parallel to this. Do you guys ever remember back whenever it was like your first day or your first week in middle school or high school, and you probably sat with all the people that you went to middle school or elementary school with, right? And then over time, you assimilate into the middle school and then you make new friends, etc., right? I think that if you bring in too many people from one group, they stay at that table. This is like maybe kind of a weird metaphor to make, but I think that it's very personal and a lot of people can relate to it, right? I think that's kind of what happens. And so that's really the issue. And anyway, let's go back. We'll watch this and we'll finish it. See, now I don't want my dad to call me to tell me, move on, stop. He would always complain, just play the video. And he would always, this is the thing, he would always say, Hassan plays videos and he doesn't talk at all. And then you play videos and you can't stop talking. What is wrong with you? Anyway, play it. Okay, excuse me. European and Asian exchange students sap differently. Of course they do. Of course. Europeans debated politics and society, while Asians just exchanged small talk and laughed. If things stay the same, Japan will turn to two divided societies, Japanese and foreigners. Politicians in Japan who can't speak English well. Language is the tool, so maybe it's okay to not speak it perfectly. But aren't we too naive, too sheltered to face the world as we are now? Well, I don't think that Japanese politicians need to learn another language. If you are in Japan and you are a Japanese, you're living in Japan, you need to learn Japanese, okay? They don't need to make everything in English for you. Now, it might be convenient for tourism, etc., and I understand that. But that being said, no. It's the same thing I said here in the U.S. You come to the United States, you gotta speak English, all right? Like, that's the way it is. And so you go to France, you better speak French. Meanwhile, some foreigners wait, was that Johnny Somali? What was that, like 3 frames, bro? Like 3 frames, I saw his ass. Some foreigners cause trouble in Japan. They do, and y'all made a mistake. See, Korea is base. I haven't talked about this for a while, so I gotta remind you guys of my great idea. I think the way to bring North Korea into the global economy and to make them a country is to make them the world's prison. And we have Kim Jong-un, and we send everybody who's a problem to North Korea. And so we send Johnny Somali to North Korea. Everybody that's a problem in the entire world goes to North Korea. It's like the country's already a prison. You might as well make some money off of it, right? On SNS, crimes are instantly blamed on foreigners. Here's the problem, though, right? Is that they're probably right. I have seen so many people go to Japan and treat it like it's a private server where everything is free and you can do whatever you want. There's a lot of people that go to countries like Japan, places in the United States, and they go specifically to the PvE servers. You never see them do this shit in Dubai. The truth is that because these countries are so permissive, And the reason why they're permissive is because they are high trust society countries that are very well developed and they have a homogenous culture. And so they can allow a higher degree of permissiveness because of that higher degree of trust. But what's happening is that you have foreigners. You got foreigners coming in there and causing all the problems. And that's what's happening over in Japan. I want to see a Japan where diverse people can live together. That's not going to happen. You can have people that live together to a degree, but there is a degree of diversity that becomes untenable. Like, let's say an Islamic fundamentalist that's living next to a person who is trans that, you know, has like 3 adopted kids. Like, this is going to cause issues. And I'm sure that in some cases it works out, but you extrapolate this data and you're going to have problems and problems and problems. Multiculturalism. There's a degree of it that works, but extremism is the problem. And the issue is that whenever you have a lot of people that don't integrate, if you want to go to Japan, you want to change Japan and make Japan more like you, or more like where you came from, go back to where you came from. From your side, how does Japan look? This is my perspective on Japan. Japan looks like a country that is on the brink of a inevitable collapse because of its birth rates. And I think this is something that's existential. It's happening to South Korea also. It's happening to a couple of countries in Europe, and it's happening in general. Now, why is this happening? I think there's like 10 different reasons, and honestly, I don't really know all the reasons, but it is obviously happening. People are despawning faster than they're spawning, then you're going to have the server be empty, right? That's what happens. And I think also Japan is becoming more and more xenophobic because people go to Japan and they treat Japan like it's an anime. I'll give you an example of this. So this is kind of what's happening, right? Tourists are poking holes in the screen erected to block photos from Mount Fuji. Yeah, there we go, right? And this is the kind of stuff that I find to be so just incredibly disrespectful and just entitled. Chinese tourist. Well, that's the thing, right? Is that what's really great about China becoming more modernized and industrialized is that China is the other country with asshole tourists. Back in the day, every tourist that was being an asshole in another country, it was always an American, right? But now China is doing their part. And now there's a bunch of Chinese tourists that go out all over the world, and now they're carving their name on the pyramids. Russians are notorious for being asshole tourists. My dad told me that the Japanese people called Russians Americans with no dollars. Because my dad visited Japan for like the World Fair in like the 60s or like late 60s, early 70s, because he was in Vietnam. And so, yeah, he told me about that. In general, Japan should not put up with this at all. In my opinion, if you're doing this, they should just say you're destroying property and, you know, you're getting deported immediately and you're never coming back. Like, it's amazing that the Japanese people put up with this, and I think that they shouldn't. Sometimes you have to do things that aren't nice in order to maintain things that are nice.